It's common to hear people ridicule those who send thoughts and prayers after a natural disaster. The reasoning is clear. Prayer has no ostensible causal efficacy, and so serves only as a hollow placeholder for substantial action. In a way, I think this is obviously true. It definitely seems very unlikely, or at least there's a dearth of evidence to suggest, that prayer has direct effects on the world. But I find the idea objectionable even in purely theological terms. God isn't just some psychological ego who might change his mind on intervening in the world depending upon how many people earnestly pray. Now, it's important to understand that the petitionary prayer is very much a central feature of many theological and religious traditions. There is a very important strain within religion that should always make space for the kind of interventionist prayer, in the same way that historically oriented apocalypticism will always ask for a kind of intervention to redeem history. This is simply a natural response to living in a fallen, corrupted world. Things are not as they should be, and so you call upon and invoke God in order to better them. However, what I want to touch upon in this video is that if you believe, implicitly or explicitly, that prayer is really nothing more than a cosmic slot machine, sort of putting in coins of prayer and getting out divine rewards, then your religious life and your prayer life will most likely be very stale and deeply unrewarding. Notice how in these types of prayers, after all, people are praying for an end, for an aim. You pray in order that something in your life will change, in order that God will do this or that, in order that whatever is going on now, whatever exists within your present moment, would vanish and bring you things that you want instead. This attitude implicitly treats prayer as though it were essentially a tool, simply a means to an end. Subsequently, it also puts prayer in basically the same category as everything else in our existence, all the other activities that we engage in on a regular basis. We spend the entirety of our existence, after all, chasing things that will produce the effect of happiness or fulfillment within us. I've seen a few of those videos suggesting that atheists try praying before they criticize or consider religion, and the implication is much the same. The idea that prayer is just something that you do in order to achieve an end, in order to have some sort of revelation or clarity or evidence in order to believe. Prayer is thereby thought to be useful, is the key word. It has a utility, a value dependent upon what it can bring us. But what I would like to suggest is that we should be looking to incorporate an understanding of prayer as something that is brilliantly, beautifully useless. That is, a prayer that just is, not a prayer that does something for us. This is precisely because I think prayer or meditation is that moment in the day or in your life in general where you want to be coming to a standstill, where you want to be doing something categorically different from everything else, from this process of chasing things in order to acquire their effects, using everything in the world as a means to the end of fulfillment. If instead you can cultivate a kind of prayer which is just prayer, and then that's it, with no because afterwards, then I think you discover something rather beautiful. Naturally, if you try to do this, there's a kind of jump as you prepare for the expectation. You think, oh, I'm praying or I'm meditating. Why? What am I doing? I'm doing it because this or that, because I want this or that effect. You think, what am I getting from this? What's its utility? How is it improving me? I see a lot of people on social media who treat their religion and their prayer life more generally as just another facet of self-improvement alongside going to the gym or eating healthy or working hard at your job. Prayer and religion in general are just sort of stuck in there as yet another means of getting better, of improving yourself, hiking up your value, primarily in the eyes of other people. And yet, how can we expect religion, and most specifically prayer, to bring us peace when we are doing it for something else? When we are inherently discontented with prayer because we're using prayer to go find something else. That very emotion declares prayer and declares anything in the world inadequate. It makes us think that it's not quite enough. It's not what we need right now. We need something that it might bring us instead. You might think also of the way in which many people today talk about manifestation, which to me seems basically like a kind of a prayer for capitalism, basically. You meditate in order to make lots of money, in order to attract that person you have a crush on, in order to do this, in order to do that. It's just the same kind of consumerism that you would employ when you were going to Walmart or Target. You just happen to be sitting alone in your room and then claiming that this is spiritual, when it's not spiritual at all. It's, as I say, just a psychological capitalism. And so in this vein, prayer or meditation or whatever practice we may be speaking of simply becomes a tool to consume, or something you might consume, I should say, in order to acquire an effect, in just the same way that you would go to the store to buy skincare to clear your acne, sports gear to just play sport. There's a utility involved in each case. Whatever you have now in the present is deemed inadequate. It's always something else that is deferred continually that you're actually looking to get. The key here is to focus on your expectation. Why do we have expectations like these? Simply because we believe that where we are now is insufficient, that we are presently inadequate. And so we become accustomed to and ultimately internalize a system that convinces us that our happiness is just beyond the next purchase, just beyond the next desideratum. If you can just get that next thing, then you will have what you want. We then apply this same style of thinking to prayer. I do prayer, I do meditation for the sake of something. I'm always looking away from the present moment. I'm always seeking something else because something else is what's going to fill me up, not the present moment. My argument is that prayer or meditation is precisely that moment when we stop doing that altogether. That's exactly what we're abandoning when we pray and when we meditate. You are here trying to cultivate a moment and in general an attitude of divine uselessness. You're trying to create a moment where the shark stops swimming, where you just cease your movement for a moment and let yourself sink into the present. And what you find at that moment is that it is precisely your movement, your constant insecurity and sense of insufficiency is what's kept you on the surface of things. Your endless process of seeking something else and then something else and always being discontented by everything is precisely what's covering up what you're actually looking for. Or to put it more succinctly, what you're looking for when you set out in movement is precisely what you find when you stand still. One of the Buddha's most famous metaphors was to describe the disturbed mind as being analogous to a bowl of water that's been stirred up. When you look into the bowl, you can't see anything but this constant whirling, this endless, restless dynamism. But when we slow everything down, the image begins to become clearer. At first it's difficult. At first you're just only catching glimpses of yourself as the water begins to slow down, but then at a certain point you see yourself with real clarity, and you realize then that you've always been there. You see yourself for what you are, abiding, eternal. You've always been looking into that bowl. Your reflection has always been ready for you, but the bowl was just so disturbed that you weren't able to see yourself even as you remained looking. When we come to pray, when we come to meditate, we are slowing everything down in order to see what has always been there. And when we have dispelled the ignorance that propels us onward in this chase, we come to realize that life is nothing but the pursuit of nothing. We always think there's something that we might just get through all the desiderata that we seek, but with clarity we realize that desire isn't really going anywhere. There's no great something that will finally fill you up, and so there's no reason to run and chase as though there were. So be still. Pray. Silently, quietly. Focus on your breathing. Focus on a mantra. Focus on an icon. But be still. Don't treat this as though it was some means to an end. Don't treat it as though it were a moment where you're about to achieve something, even if that something is peace, or bliss, or a revelation from God. Don't treat it as though it was something you would get anything from at all. Just be. And let go. I know that you are exhausted. I know you're tired of running after everything in life and finding it all to be just hollow. So come. Rest a while. Be still. And rest. I imagine, and I think this is very likely actually, that you haven't rested in so many years, so much so that you've sort of forgotten how to do it. That's really what's at issue here. Really what I'm saying in this video is that we forget how to rest, we forget how just to be, because we have become so convinced that we need to be something, to do something, to add something else onto our being. And so people come to prayer and meditation as though they were just carrying out another daily task. Same with church or mosque or synagogue. You're doing it just because your parents tell you you have to, or because you feel you have to be there, or you feel guilty if you don't go. It's another ordeal, it's another task, it's something you get through for the sake of something else that's not yet here, some effect that is deferred and delayed from the present moment. My humble take would be that religion becomes truly meaningful to people, as opposed to simply a marker of identity and association with a particular clan, when it really represents true rest, when it and its particular practices can really be a part of the world where you come to see the meaning of everything, the point of everything else that you're doing, a point where we can reveal that life is rest, if only we would let it take us home. It's a generally pretty good litmus test, I think, to see if those things in religion that we practice, that we believe, make us angrier, make us more attached to the world, make us more violent and acerbic toward the people who disagree with us, or whether they make us more peaceful, more loving, more compassionate, more willing and faithful in the suffering of hardship. We need to ask ourselves continually, am I doing this because I want to prove something? Am I doing it because I feel I'm not quite good enough yet, and I need just to show someone, myself, my parents, my friends, even God perhaps, I just need to show someone that I'm good enough? It causes suffering, such immense suffering, and I know that you, viewer, you are tired of this running, tired of needing to constantly do something in order to attain some goal that is distant from yourself. Religion must ultimately seek to cultivate an awareness of the fact that you are enough. In religious terms, we might say that God dwells within you. God being the end of everything, the reason we do anything at all. He's not just out there in the cosmos, floating off in the void, inaccessible, cold, lofty. He's here, within you, within all things. When you pray, or when you meditate, don't do it because it's something you feel like you have to do. Don't do it because it's something cool that will suddenly produce an effect that will make you feel better about yourself. Take it as a moment when the movement stops, when you cease looking for something else, and you just sit with your own being. And then, with shining clarity, you will see that your being alone is sufficient. And it always has been. Thank you for watching. Check out my Substack, link in the description. Please subscribe and share the video if you like the content. And I will see you very soon. Take care.